Welcome to Lessons in Leadership. Steve Adubato with my colleague Mary Gamba. Mary, we're leading into this one-on-one interview I did with Scott Kobler, who's a partner at McCarter English law firm and also the chair of NJPBS, part of our Leaders in Law series. What was the most significant takeaway for you?
Just listening to his passion for giving back, for, just public television, but also it's part of our Leaders in Law series, talking about his experience and also talking about what are up and coming, those younger lawyers that are coming in and what motivates them and what makes them tick. So it was one of my favorite interviews in a while. It was really great.
I've known Scott for a long time. What you're going to pick up in this interview is not just his passion for the law, but his passion for, as Mary just said so aptly, giving back. He's been a long-time trustee of public broadcasting, previously with NJN, New Jersey Network, now the chair of NJPBS, the public television station in the state of New Jersey, but also involved in NJPAC, the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, the arts. And he also talked about, as Mary said, younger lawyers coming into the profession of law in law firms. They may have gone to law school and done well. That's not the same as being prepared to practice law, to lead a team, to argue a case in front of a jury or a judge, to coach and mentor others on your team, to run a meeting, to negotiate. A lot of those skills are developed over time, and they're not always so natural. So this is an in-depth interview as part of our Leaders in Law series with a brilliant attorney and someone who gives back a lot, Scott Kobler. We're joined once again. It's been a while, but he's back by popular demand. He's Scott Kobler, and he's a partner at a great law firm, McCarter English, and also the chair of NJPBS, our longtime partners in public broadcasting. Scott, good to see you.
Steve, good to see you too.
We'll talk about public broadcasting in just a bit, but let's start off with this. This is part of our series, Leaders in Law. You've been in the field of law for a few years. Do you admit that, counselor?
I do. I concede.
Okay, 2025 and forward. Compare the practice of law, leading in the practice of law today versus just say 10 years ago. Please, Scott.
So, Steve, you know that when it comes to leadership in the practice of law, we'll be full of platitudes today and probably generalizations too. And you know that the practice of law can vary from being in a big law firm such as mine, to being on the bench, to being in public interest, to being a public defender or a prosecutor. Obviously, the pandemic has changed the playing field. Technology has changed the playing field. There's a lot of introduction of the concept, and I think to a great fault, of artificial intelligence. I started practicing before there were fax machines, when there were just memory typewriters, before there were computers, before there were things like this. And so I think that the practice of law has changed because of the expectations of people entering this, the word boundaries, the fact that when I started to practice, Steve, and I'm in the transactional side, that if you wanted a prospectus printed, you went to the printer and you stayed all night. Now everything is done on a desktop. Now things are sent electronically. Now correspondence can occur in the middle of the night. And I'm not sure that's entirely a bad thing, because it used to be when I began practicing that everything would get backed up. Now things can be addressed and dispensed with.
And also, I was remiss, let me just close that McCarter English is an underwriter of some of our public affairs programming, particularly state of affairs. Let me try this, Scott. What I'm really curious about when it comes to you and other lawyers who, beyond your practicing law at a major firm, make a commitment to be engaged, involved, and be a leader in the not-for-profit community. For you, it's the arts. For you, it's public broadcasting. Where does that come from?
Well, I think that's a question that might take 8 to 10 hours as opposed to 10 minutes. You know, because you know, it's in our DNA. I counsel people who want to get involved that they should align themselves with something about which they feel passionate. They also should feel a little uncomfortable, maybe be outside of their usual wheelhouse. I've had the great luxury of being at a firm that has been supportive of and been a great platform for a public service. It's interesting when people speak about a dedication to public service as a 100% public interest lawyer, that there are so many ways in so many sectors of the law where, given your expertise, given your relationships, given your passion, where you can make a difference. And I have to say, whether it was something that comes from the way I was raised, or the support of my wife, or it's been longstanding, and it's been a pleasure. I actually, Steve, I would tell you that while some might think I'm credentialed on the professional side and have accomplished great things, I think I'm defined. My life is better defined by what I've done on the public side.
And let me also be clear that Scott Kobler, very engaged not only in public broadcast, the NJPBS, and previously New Jersey Network, before it evolved to be NJPBS under the umbrella of the WNET group. Very engaged at NJPAC. I actually saw our good friend and colleague John Schreiber yesterday at an event down there at NJPAC. We love NJPAC. And also the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, where he's been elected as a life trustee. Question. Younger lawyers coming into the profession, Scott, do you have to teach, coach, motivate, cajole, what, for them to understand that there is a side outside of bringing in money to the law firm? Listen, if we didn't bring in money, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. But along those lines, the whole question of community involvement, making a difference outside of making money in the law, is it more challenging with younger lawyers? I know it's a loaded question.
I don't think it is. I will tell you, I am extraordinarily optimistic from what I see at our firm and from their colleagues whom I get a chance to meet. There's so much pro bono work being done. I've often felt that my skill set has been more aligned with the board work and other charitable work that I do, more so than pro bono representation. Just not in my area of expertise. I don't think I would necessarily be that effective, but that doesn't mean that I haven't, on the pro bono side, done a considerable amount of corporate work on behalf of nonprofit clients, in addition to the time I spend as a board member. But I am very excited. I am encouraged by the interests and attitudes of the young people whom I see in our firm.
Question. I do a fair amount of, outside of my broadcast work, and I know I do a fair amount of coaching in the field of leadership and communication. Our mutual colleague, Neil Shapiro, the president of WNET Group, and I have a whole range of conversations about leading, and just leading and not just leading, right? When it comes to developing business development skills, leadership skills, osmosis, training, what? Just go ahead.
So I think the best leaders are leaders by example, leaders who approach things from, I'm going to say this, a parental perspective. When I mentor, my expectation is that I want my daughter to be treated with the same dignity and civility that I would be treating someone who's working for me. I recognize that you need to share, that you are not always right, that there is a latitude to have someone speak truth to power, that there are certain things that I can impart, Steve. I think that one of the great parables of leadership is do no harm, that you really want to advance whatever the enterprise might be, that clients are looking for value. They're not looking to be spoken down to. They don't need to know the sources of a house closing going back to the Magna Carta. They want you to be effective They want you to be effective in executing. They view law often on the private side as a commodity, and it isn't. It's like working with a physician. You're selling your collective expertise. But when you get out of law school, you don't have the benefit of the years of residency and fellowship training that a physician might. It's an apprentice's profession. And you are sometimes dealing with extraordinarily bright individuals. They have to learn to be relatable to clients. They have to learn how to be efficient, but they also can't be given serial mind-numbing exercises for the sake of doing work. And I felt that our firm in particular has been pretty good over the years or the decades that I've watched it in trying to bring people along with the balance of teaching them. And then personally, I feel as if you have to share. And so have a group of folks who've worked around me for a long period of time. And I think, Steve, the underlying value for me is being a parent. You want to see your children do well.
How dare we think of leadership as parenting, which I often do. No, they're not children. We get that. But taking that approach is a very healthy one. And
you love them like that. So there you go.
Yes. Not that they do what. Never mind. That's another.
That's another session.
That's another one. Scott Kobler. I want to make it clear. Not only is he a partner at McCarter English, but the chair of NJPBS, the public television station, public television network, part of the WNET group in New Jersey. Thank you, Scott, for not just the work you're doing in law, but thank you for being the chair of our board. Thank you.
Steve, I do want to go on the record so that while I'm here to, again, thank you for telling the stories of New Jersey. I think it's a state of over 9 million people with no commercial television. My line is always, but for us and people like Steve Adubato, we wouldn't have the unifying feeling that we get from PBS.
That's kind of you, Scott, but as you well know, it is our team that makes it happen.
It's a village.
It does. She was right. That's Scott Kobler. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, the Helix, Fedway Associates, Inc., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856. Hi, everyone. Steve Adubato. Welcome to a very special program here on News 12. Plus, we about to kick off an interview that we did with the gentleman you see on camera right now. He is Dr. Stephen K. Libutti, Senior Vice President, Oncology Services, RWJBarnabas Health, and William N. Hait Director, Rutgers Cancer Institute. Steve, good to have you with us, Doctor.
Nice to be here, Steve. Thank you.
People are going to see in just a moment a conversation. You and I had an in-depth conversation about cancer care, how it's evolved, treatment of not just people dealing with cancer, but their family members. One thing I wanted to make sure that we teed up here, because I was talking about outpatient services, outpatient care of those who are dealing with cancer. But there is a Jack and Cheryl Morris, and Jack's a good friend, personal friend as well. Jack and Cheryl Morris Cancer Center launching an outpatient care in May of 2025. What exactly is that, Doctor?
So thank you, Steve. The Jack and Cheryl Morris Cancer Center is actually going to be New Jersey's first freestanding cancer hospital with both outpatient, inpatient, as well as research, all taking place in one building. It's going to be the new home for the Rutgers Cancer Institute in New Brunswick. And in May, the outpatient component of that new center will be opening to see patients. And what this means essentially is I believe there are only 15 freestanding cancer hospitals in the country. And this will bring New Jersey into that same conversation as places like New York and Philadelphia with freestanding cancer hospitals, and allow the citizens of New Jersey to get that level of exceptional care without having to leave the state. And that, together with 2 additional outpatient facilities, will be opening in late 2025, 2026, the Melchiori Cancer Center in Livingston, New Jersey, and the Cancer Center on the Vogel campus in Tinton Falls, New Jersey, will create an integrated system of locations where entering any door brings you into the NCI-designated comprehensive cancer care that you'll receive at RWJBarnabas and the Rutgers Cancer Institute.
And Doctor, you mentioned NCI in the interview that people are about to see. Remind everyone what that is.
The National Cancer Institute. It's the largest funder of cancer research in the United States and one of the roughly 27 centers and institutes of the National Institutes of Health.
Thank you, Doctor. So the doctor's in the house. Here's the conversation. It's important. Check it out. The field of cancer research, cancer treatment has, and you've seen this better than most, has changed dramatically in the last, say, 5 to 10 years. I know it's cancer by cancer. I shouldn't say it that way, but how much has it changed?
Well, I think what's changed about it is our ability to understand cancer as many different diseases and our ability to understand cancer at a genetic or molecular level, allowing us to better personalize or tailor our approaches to treatment to fit the individual patient and their cancer as an attempt to maximize the efficacy of those strategies and minimize toxicity.
I was remiss. Let me also disclose that RWJBarnabas Health, a major underwriter of public broadcasting, as well as the Caucus Educational Corporation, our not-for-profit production company. Doctor, let me ask you this, and let me also disclose I've had conversations offline with Dr. Libutti about family issues having to do with cancer. You get those calls a lot, do you not, Doctor?
I do, and it is actually the best part of my job. It's the part that I feel very, very passionate about. If I can be of assistance in navigating what is often a very scary and traumatic diagnosis, it's a privilege to be able to do that. And that's really our approach for the oncology service line at RWJBarnabas Health and the Rutgers Cancer Institute, is to make that journey less scary and intimidating, and to provide not just the treatments that a patient with a cancer diagnosis needs, but the care. And I believe that care starts at that first encounter, trying to navigate the complexities of a cancer diagnosis to a successful treatment plan.
Doctor, do this for us. The people will see in the logo behind you, not just the RWJBarnabas Health logo, but also I should also disclose I'm a son of Rutgers, graduate school, doctoral program, and I bleed Rutgers, if you will. That being said, some folks are wondering, so what's the connection? Why are there 2 logos? Explain that to folks. It's more than logos.
Yeah, so I am truly a son of both entities, RWJBarnabas Health and Rutgers Cancer Institute. When I was recruited in 2017, I was recruited by both to leverage the power of the state's largest health system, largest academic health system, and the state's premier public research university. And that partnership is incredibly enabling. It gives us a platform from a clinical perspective to care for a large population of the state's citizens that receive their care from RWJBarnabas Health, and to have the power and strength of cutting-edge research at our NCI-designated Comprehensive Cancer Center at Rutgers.
Doctor, I'm sorry for interrupting. Tell folks, the NCI gets thrown around a lot. That acronym stands for?
National Cancer Institute. So the federal government, the National Institutes of Health, have approximately 27 institutes and centers that fund research and provide actually a research hospital in Bethesda, Maryland, that cares for patients on research protocols. But the National Cancer Institute is the largest funder of cancer research in the United States, and they designate centers through a highly competitive process. There are currently only 73 in the United States, and the comprehensive designation is the highest designation they give, and we have to recompete for that designation every 5 years.
Do this for us. Outpatient care, outpatient cancer care becoming more significant and more important than ever before. Talk about that piece of the equation as it relates to cancer care.
Absolutely. So it is a large piece of how we care for patients with cancer. Approximately 85% of patients with a cancer diagnosis will receive most of their cancer care in the outpatient setting. And it's why we, as an organization, RWJBarnabas and the Rutgers Cancer Institute, are opening 3 brand new facilities in New Jersey to provide that critical integrated outpatient care. And when I say integrated, I mean integrated across all of the disciplines that work as a team to care for a patient with a cancer diagnosis: medical oncology, radiation oncology, surgical oncology, supportive care, all working together in the same space. And so we have 3 brand new facilities that'll be opening beginning in 2025.
Doctor, I mentioned earlier that, and I've talked to you offline, and again, not the only person who knows you, and it's bad for you that we have your cell phone. That being said, this is something that I think about a lot. In my other life, I do a lot of leadership and communication coaching. Let's talk about physician communication. Your ability to have those conversations that are not always clinical, meaning colleague to colleague clinical conversations. They're with people who do not have that background. Long-winded way of getting to this question. Is it natural for most physicians to be excellent interpersonal communicators? You're smiling. Why?
I'm smiling because I don't know that it comes naturally per se. A lot of the challenges you have to navigate to ultimately make it through medical school and residency and a fellowship to become a cancer provider leverage communication skills as an asset. I think physicians, by their nature, and certainly those that choose to go into cancer, are compassionate people, and I think that ability to connect with others is part of what makes them good at what they do, and we value that when we're recruiting members of our team. But if there's at any level, if I have any abilities to effectively communicate, I have to, and the reason I smile is I have to thank my mom, who was a 3rd grade school teacher. And that was always a prime area of importance for her with my sister and I. My sister is an attorney where good communication skills are important as well. And so it was ingrained in our home from a very early age that it's important to be able to communicate and to do so effectively with people. So that gave me maybe some advantages in navigating this, but we look to our physicians first and foremost to put the patients first, to really be patient focused, and having good communication skills is part of the ability to do that successfully.
Well said. Final question, Doctor. You've been at this for a few years, okay? Your greatest professional/personal how do I phrase this the right way? I don't want to say joy. That's maybe not the right. The greatest satisfaction you get professionally and personally from doing what you do is
helping people. I think at the end of the day, I recognize, having gone through the cancer journey with family members, what a stress and struggle that is. And I see my greatest joy and satisfaction in both personally helping folks to navigate that, but also from a professional standpoint, building a system and an infrastructure that allows all of my providers to take some of that burden off of patients with a cancer diagnosis and wrap a warm blanket around them and provide that care in addition to the treatment. For me, when I get feedback that that's actually succeeded, either from the patients or my providers, that gives me the greatest sense of accomplishment and satisfaction.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Steve. A pleasure.
Dr. Stephen Libutti, RWJBarnabas Health, the Senior Vice President, Oncology Services, RWJBarnabas Health, and William N. Hait Director, Rutgers Cancer Institute. Doctor, all the best to you and the team.
Thanks to you too, Steve.
You got to stay with us. We'll be right back. Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague, Mary Gamba, has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media. Welcome back to Lessons in Leadership. Steve Adubato with my colleague, Mary Gamba. Mary, I know that I say this all the time. We're in and out of clothes and different ties and suits, and you're wearing different things. You think it matters to the audience?
I don't think it matters. And if anything, it could be a fun quiz. If you see something, say something, just shoot me an email and say, aha, we realized that you taped that out of order. So luckily this one, I think we are in the right outfits, but I could be wrong. I'll figure it out when we edit it after the fact.
I think we are too. Hey, Mary, we've got 2 minutes before we wrap up. I sent you an article about the MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority. Why are you shaking your head?
Well, it's just a funny story. I'll let you finish.
The funny story is this. They spent $250 million on these things. They're called help points. Hopefully Sylvester in post-production can show a picture of what these things are. There's these, you can't tell, it's the New York Post. They're these things you're supposed to talk into, and you're supposed to get help right away, faster and be more efficient. 50% of the calls on these audio things were crank calls. 22% were lost calls. 28% were legitimate calls. One of the things people were saying was, hey, there's an airplane that just landed on the tracks. Hey, MTA, can I order my McDonald's here? Can someone bring me some water? Mary, how could you, from a leadership point of view, from a fiscal responsibility point of view, how do you spend that money on a system that's so poorly thought out?
It's bizarre to me. It's mind-boggling. 100 years ago, and you still see them in New York City, they have them around where you open it up and it's an emergency call button. And back in the day, you needed that. We didn't have cell phones. We have cell phones now. I'm not saying that there's not a place in those subway systems. My son's at NYU. I'm in those subways a lot. And it would be very great to have a couple of those around just in case something happens quickly. You hit an emergency button and the police can come immediately. But to spend that amount of money, nobody sat around and said, okay, how will these be used? And maybe how will they not be used correctly?
It's not a hit on the MTA, Metropolitan Transit Authority, but rather just a question of when you make a change, don't make it just to make it. Make it because it makes sense. Make it because it's timely. Make it because you vetted it. And as opposed to, hey, we just spent $250 million on something that doesn't work. I'm Steve Adubato. That's Mary Gamba for the entire team. What am I, Stephen A. Smith doing this? He does it at the beginning of his show on First Take. Thank you for, he doesn't do it with a pen. Thank you for watching Lessons in Leadership. See you next time. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, the Helix, Fedway Associates, Inc., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media.